She was dying on his porch, and he knew she wasn't from this world. The storm had taken over the forest. The rain had been falling since before dawn. It wasn't drizzle or a downpour. It was that steady, heavy rain that felt like it was cleansing the world of something. A wet murmur in the leaves, the trunks, the wooden roof of the cabin. Inside, the silence was broken only by the crackling fire in the fireplace and the rhythmic sound of water dripping into a bucket near the broken window. Ethan had left the city 3 months ago. Former engineer, ex-boyfriend of someone he couldn't look in the eyes anymore, former employee of a company that replaced him with a cheaper algorithm. The off-grid cabin, inherited from a reclusive uncle, was the only place where the world didn't demand anything. Not from him, nor of him. Then she appeared. That morning, or maybe night, it was hard to tell with the sky so gray. Ethan had opened the front door with an old rifle in his hands, only to see a figure collapse onto the soaked deck. A body. Female. Barely clothed. Dark skin, but not like any human he'd ever known. It was deep like fertile, wet soil. Like damp wood. Like a secret buried long ago. She was trembling. Her long hair stuck to her back and face like black roots. There was something sacred about her. Or dangerous. Maybe both. He looked around. No trail. No footprints. Just that fallen figure, gasping like a wounded animal. Ethan hesitated. Not out of cowardice, but out of something more primitive. She wasn't human. Her eyes opened. 2 large, liquid orbs without defined pupils. Blue-gray like a war-torn sky. She looked at him. Said nothing. But that gaze seemed to understand everything. Fear, doubt, compassion. It was as if she was saying, "You know I'm not from here. And yet, will you help me?" And he did. Without knowing why, he grabbed a towel, wrapped it around her, and carefully carried her to the couch. She was cold, not like someone with a fever, colder than the rain, as if her body existed on a different scale of life. "Do you understand me?" he asked, kneeling beside her. She didn't answer, but she blinked slowly, like each movement was a choice. Then she coughed. Blood, but not red. A dark, thick, almost black substance dripping from the corner of her mouth. The towel slipped. On her shoulder, there was a strange wound, circular, like a burn, but pulsing faintly. The skin around it was regenerating slowly, right before his eyes. It was as if the skin itself knew what to do. Ethan took a deep breath. "Okay, I don't know who you are, or what you are, but I'm not going to let you die here." The fire crackled again, as if approving. While the rain kept its mournful sound outside, he improvised. Blankets, warm water, extra firewood. He reheated the canned bean soup, even without knowing if it made any sense to her. She still didn't speak, but she didn't sleep either. Her eyes followed him, attentive, as if studying not only what he did, but why he did it. When night came, the tension shifted into a strange silence. Intense. He couldn't sleep with an alien creature on his couch, but he also couldn't shake the feeling of connection. It wasn't attraction. Not yet. It was curiosity mixed with an instinct to protect. Outside, thunder roared. The power flickered for a moment. Then she spoke. "Ethan." Her voice was like a digital whisper, as if passing through a metallic filter. But clear. She said his name. He froze. "How do you?" She just closed her eyes, as if saying, "It doesn't matter how. What matters is that I'm here. And you chose me." The next morning, Ethan woke up on the living room floor, covered by an old blanket. The sun hadn't yet broken through the clouds, but the rain had stopped. A heavy silence hung over the cabin. He slowly turned his head, and she was still there. Sail. Now he knew her name. Not because she said it out loud, but somehow, he just knew. A sound that rose in his mind, complete, with a strange certainty. Sail. Like the name had been planted there, decoded at just the right moment. She was sitting now on the couch, calmly shrugged off the blanket. She watched her own fingers, as if testing the movement of something new. When she looked at him, there was an expression that reminded him of pain or guilt. Ethan stood up slowly. "You feeling better?" he asked. She nodded. "Still unstable," she said, voice rougher, more human than the night before. He stepped closer, carefully. "You're hurt. I don't know what caused that, but..." She cut him off, looking down. "I was hunted." The word fell like a stone. Ethan felt his spine stiffen. "What?" Sale hesitated. then said, "I shouldn't be here. Not on your planet. Not in your atmosphere." But I refused to follow orders. I ran. They came after me. He sat down across from her, swallowing hard. "They who?" She looked out the window. A wet branch fell outside. "They clean up what goes off course. Hunters. Not biological. Not like me, but programmed to correct deviations." I was a deviation. The word sounded like a death sentence. Ethan didn't understand everything, but he understood enough. She was a deserter, and someone, or something, was coming for her. "Did you slow them down?" he asked. She stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head slowly. "Maybe, but not for long." His stomach turned. Outside, the silence felt heavier now, like the forest was listening. Later, while she slept, or shut down, Ethan didn't know how to call it. He searched through his uncle's old workshop, found a backup generator, an old radio, tools, and some parts from a deactivated military drone. Nothing that could stop an alien ship, but something inside him sparked. He wouldn't run. Not this time. In the weeks before, he'd run from everything. The job, friends, his ex-life. But now, something was different. She was different, and she needed him. He returned to the living room and watched her. Sale was breathing slowly. Her face was calm. Her hair, still damp, stuck to her temples. Her skin seemed less dark now, as if subtly changing with the environment, as if adapting. She wasn't human. But there, on that old couch, curled up among blankets and warmth, she looked like the most alive and fragile thing he had ever seen. Then the light flickered. And oh, Sale woke suddenly, sitting upright. Her eyes now had an inner, pulsing glow. "What is it?" Ethan moved closer. She pointed to the ceiling. Beyond the ceiling, "They found my trail. They're coming." She nodded. "Maybe not today, but the forest is already listening." "What does that mean?" "It means you're at risk now too." Ethan fell silent. He could send her away. Try to forget her. Let the sky handle what the sky brought. But the thought of seeing her die out there, like a wounded animal, abandoned by the entire universe, broke something inside him. He didn't know who the hunters were, or exactly what Sale had done, but he knew no one should be hunted for trying to choose their own path, even if they were from another world, and especially if they landed on his porch. That night, Ethan had his first real nightmare in months. He dreamed of the cabin in flames, trees burning, the sky torn apart by black machines like giant insects, and Sale, fallen, calling him silently. He woke up gasping. There was no fire, but the cold inside the cabin was strange. Heavy. The forest was too quiet. He got up slowly, grabbed the old rifle, and went out to the porch. Morning light was gray, the kind of light that makes everything seem half dead. No birds, no wind, and that's when he saw it. A line of marks on the ground. Not footprints, not tire tracks, but trails, like something had dragged itself across the earth with absurd precision. A straight line, impossibly straight, ending less than 20 feet from the cabin, and disappearing. The portable radio in his pocket, old, always silent, let out a sharp static noise. KKSSSHHHHH. ET identified. Anomalous organic presence. Ethan froze. The radio had never worked. Never. He turned it off. Turned it back on. Nothing. Silence. He ran back inside. Sale was standing. She shouldn't have been. She could barely walk the day before. But now, her eyes shone like foggy headlights. Her skin, darker, almost black, seemed on alert. "They're mapping," she said. "Mapping. Your forest. Your airspace. Your choice." Ethan didn't understand. "My choice." She stepped closer. "They're not here just for me. They're here to assess you. Your choice. Your interference." Silence. Slow. Uneasy. "And what if I don't interfere?" She took a deep breath, almost as if it hurt. "Then I disappear. Without sound. Without trace. And they move on. To the next deviation." He clenched his fists. This wasn't fair. There was no trial. No chance. It was just elimination of anomalies. In the following hours, Ethan started transforming the cabin, not into a fortress. There wouldn't be time, but into a shelter that made sense for her. He disabled all external electronics, cut the antenna line he never used, buried the extra generator, filled jugs with water, created a lighting system with flashlights and portable solar panels. All improvised, but all with the same goal. If they come, she won't be alone. Sale watched silently, as if absorbing the gesture more than the plan. At the end of the day, Ethan sat beside her. "Why did you come here?" She hesitated, then finally spoke. "Because you dream." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your species dreams of things it's never seen, feels for beings it doesn't know. You cry at movies, love cartoons, risk everything for ideas. That's why I came. Because I wanted to dream too." Ethan didn't know what to say, but something in him changed. Not just because of what she was, but because of who he was becoming beside her. Someone who, even without understanding what was happening, chose not to be a bystander. That night, he didn't sleep, and around 3 a.m, he saw, in the distance, lights cutting across the sky. No sound, no clear color, just movement. They weren't airplanes, nor shooting stars. They were searching, and the cabin wouldn't be invisible for long. It was a little past 4 a.m. when the world seemed to stop. It wasn't just silence. It was a total absence of sound. No birds, no crickets, not even the slow crackle of the fire in the hearth. It was like someone had turned off the sound of existence. Ethan felt his heart race before he even knew why. His skin tingled. The air, once fresh and humid from the forest, now weighed like invisible smoke. Then he realized the light was gone. Not the flashlights, nor the candles, nor the faint glow of the night sky. Everything had darkened in a way no shadow could explain. It was as if the night itself had been replaced by something denser, more absolute. Sale opened her eyes at the same moment, without warning, without noise. "They're here," she said. It wasn't surprise, not fear. It was like her body had been touched by a frequency Ethan couldn't hear. He ran to the window. Outside, he saw no trees, no sky, only liquid darkness, like black ink spilled over the world. "What is that?" he whispered. "The ship, or part of it." Outside, a blue light descended silently, not like a common beam. It was a kind of scanner, translucent, icy, that passed through the tree canopy and the cabin's roof as if the wood were vapor. A cone of cold light that floated, alive, searching for something. The light passed over Sale, then stopped over Ethan. He shivered, felt neither heat nor cold, but was like being scanned, like his soul was being converted into data. The light went out. Sale curled up. "Ethan, what was that? A judgment?" "What?" She turned slowly, her eyes glowing like dim headlights. "They're not here just for me. They're here for you too, for what you've become since you took me in." He stepped back. "And what does that mean?" She hesitated. Her voice was low. "They're going to erase it. Everything. If you let me go, your body will stay intact. But the memory, the feeling, what connected us, it will disappear." Ethan felt the ground give way beneath him for a moment, as if everything he had built over the past days, every choice, every glance, every second beside her, was just sand slipping through the fingers of an invisible hand. He took a deep breath. "No, Ethan, if this is a test, then listen carefully. I choose to remember." Without waiting for an answer, he ran to the closet and grabbed the rifle. It was an old piece, inherited from his uncle, without modern precision. But in that moment, it was more than a weapon. It was a symbol. Sale ran up to him. "Don't do this. They won't attack in a human way. I'm not doing this to win. I'm doing it because it's right." He opened the cabin door. Outside, the forest looked like a dead theater under a living dome. Above the trees, a structure floated, immense, circular, more like a planet than a ship, but weightless, just presence. A capsule descended slowly, silent, black as solid glass. When it touched the ground, 3 figures emerged, tall, thin, with elongated bodies like shadow silhouettes. No faces, no mouths, just fixed white eyes. Each step they took cut the air. No sound, no wind. Ethan cocked the rifle. Sale appeared behind him. "If I go with them, they'll spare you. It's the last chance." He turned to her and saw there, amidst the horror, the most human of feelings. Not fear, guilt. She was ready to surrender, but he wasn't ready to lose her. "This isn't a choice. This is extortion." One of the beings pointed at him. The other 2 opened something in their hands, structures like liquid mirrors, showing scenes, his memories, the moment he took her in, the soup he tried to give her, the first word she spoke. The instant he decided to protect her. All of it. Right there. In front of them. Like a trial. Sale screamed. They're extracting. Right now. Your mind. Ethan yelled back. Then let them see. See everything. Because I don't regret a single second with you. And he ran. Rifle in hand. He ran against the impossible. Against the inevitable. He knew he had no chance. Knew it was a futile gesture. But it was real. And in that moment, that was all that mattered. The creature's eyes blinked. One raised an arm. A flash cut through the air. Silence. White. Like snow on a blank screen. Then nothing. Or almost nothing. If you've ever rooted for an impossible love, if you've ever believed in something no one else could see, subscribe to the channel. Here, we never forget what's worth fighting for, even if it comes from another world. The first sensation was sound. Not words. Not music. Dripping. Regular drops on wood. Then pain. Subtle but real. Like the whole body had been restarted from the inside. Like he had been put back into the world, by force. Ethan opened his eyes. The cabin was there. Intact. The fireplace still alive, flickering timid flames. The rain had started again outside, bringing back the familiar noise of the living forest. He was lying on the living room floor. The rifle beside him, stock cracked. He tried to get up. His body ached like he'd been thrown off a building. But there was no blood, no visible wounds, just a sharp feeling that something inside him had been torn out and returned incomplete. Sale. The name slipped out like a broken whisper. Silence. He stood slowly, looked around. Nothing. No tracks. No objects out of place. No signs that a ship had hovered over them hours before. But there was something new on the floor. A circular mark, burned into the wood, the size of a capsule, and a small black sphere, the size of a walnut, left on the table. He approached it hesitantly, touched it. Nothing happened. But looking inside it, he saw images, fragments, moments, the porch, the towel, the first look, the fire, her eyes, the gesture she made when saying his name for the first time. All there, like memories preserved inside an object. He understood. It was what was left, what they let him keep. Because even after facing it, after fighting, Ethan hadn't won. He was only spared. And Sale. He didn't know. Maybe they took her body. Or maybe she gave herself up willingly. But there was something he felt. Something that couldn't be explained by logic or science. He wasn't alone anymore. Not completely. In the days that followed, Ethan tried to get back to routine. Chopping wood, cooking, cleaning the floor. But everything tasted like absence. The radio never worked again. The sky stayed cloudy. But sometimes at night, he dreamed of her. Dreams that seemed too real to be just products of longing. Dreams where she touched his face with gentle hands. Where she spoke in a language he didn't know but understood. And above all, dreams where she smiled and said she still remembered him. He never moved the sphere. It stayed there, on the table like a beacon, like a reminder that loving the impossible always comes with a price, but also that the impossible sometimes gives back. Time passed indifferent. Days turned to weeks. The forest returned to its natural sounds, distant animal calls, rustling leaves, the steady rhythm of rain on the roof. But for Ethan, the world was no longer the same. Couldn't be. The confrontation with the hunters had left an invisible mark. He didn't bleed, didn't limp, had no visible scars. But he missed something he'd never had before, and that now was part of him. Sale. She had vanished that night, taken, or maybe surrendering, to preserve what existed between them. But she didn't leave an ordinary emptiness. It was like losing a song only he could hear, and now it echoed only in memory. The black sphere, walnut-sized, remained on the cabin table. Cold, silent, but alive. Ethan watched it every day. Sometimes he spoke to it. Sometimes he just sat and let the memory do the rest. I don't know if you can hear me, but today the sky woke up purple. Rare around here. Other times, I chopped too much wood. I kept thinking about you and lost count of the logs. It felt like you were watching me, laughing. And other times, more intimate, more lonely. I wish I had held your hand before everything went dark. That's it. Slowly, the raw pain gave way to a strange kind of peace. Not acceptance, but understanding. That the world was much bigger than he had imagined. And that what he'd lived with her, as unlikely as it was, had been real. More real than whole years of lukewarm, riskless life. In the third week, something different happened. It was night. Ethan had stepped out of the cabin to gather firewood. The air felt strange, too still, with an out-of-season chill. He looked up at the sky. The moon had a silver halo around it. No clouds. Suddenly, something clicked inside him. Instinct. He dropped the wood and ran back inside. The sphere was no longer on the table. It was in the fireplace, floating. It didn't touch the fire, but hovered above the embers as if refusing the heat. It gave off a faint blue glow, the same blue as Sale's eyes. Ethan approached slowly, silently, his heart pounding. Sale. The sphere pulsed. Once, twice, then stabilized. And then it projected an image, not in the air, but inside his mind, like a vivid dream. She was alive, sitting in a curved, white, almost liquid room, eyes closed. A thread of light came from the center of her chest and extended to a figure standing. It was him, not exactly, but an energetic version, a reflection of their bond. Ethan dropped to his knees. She was still there, not dead, not gone, just distant, but connected. In the following days, the sphere started activating on its own at certain times. In the morning, it showed images he didn't recognize: golden forests, suspended seas, triple moons. In the afternoon, it displayed floating symbols, as if teaching something. And at night, always her, breathing, meditating, sometimes with open eyes, staring forward, as if she knew that on the other side of the connection, he was watching her too. Ethan learned to interpret it as a form of communication. No speech, no writing, but there was exchange, feeling. He began to change. He woke early, as if she was watching. He cared for the cabin, the food, the space around it, not out of routine, but as if honoring a silent promise to keep being the man she saw in him. He started to draw, on wood, stones, the cabin's outer wall, symbols that came spontaneously, inspired by the shapes shown by the sphere. Intertwined circles, spiral curves, long strokes like orbits. And one day, he built something new, a garden behind the house. Small, with white stones, medicinal plants, and a wooden sculpture representing two eyes, one human, one alien, joined by a thread. He called it Sale's Garden. There, every night, he sat, sometimes to meditate, sometimes just to exist. And over time, silence stopped being emptiness. It became presence. One of those nights, something happened. The sphere, on a stone in the garden's center, glowed brighter. Ethan looked at it, waited. A new image appeared, different from the others. Sale had her eyes open. She was talking to someone, a tall figure, distant-looking, faceless, not a hunter, more like a guardian. And then, for a moment, she smiled. Not at the guardian, at him. It was a message. Something was changing. That night, Ethan dreamed of a cabin. The first day, the rain-soaked porch. But at the end of the dream, Sale reached out her hand, not asking for help, but inviting. And when he touched it, the forest vanished, and they were floating, together. He woke with tears in his eyes. But for the first time since she disappeared, he didn't feel pain. He felt purpose. She was alive. They were connected. And something was waiting. Not the end, but the next step. The storm began without warning. It wasn't like the others. No thunder or lightning. Pure pressure. The air thickened. The sky grew too heavy, as if a presence was slowly descending over the world. Unhurried but certain. Ethan felt it before he saw it. He was in Sale's garden, as on every night, when the air around him seemed to stop moving. The wind died. The leaves froze. Even the insects fell silent. The sphere beside him went dark. It was as if it was holding its breath. He stood alert. Sale. Nothing. Suddenly, the sky exploded in a silent white flash. No sound, no heat, just light. In the center of the garden, the ground cracked. Not violently, but precisely, as if something had waited exactly for this moment and place to return or emerge. And then she appeared. Sale, but not like before. She floated, not touching the ground. Her dark skin now reflected patterns like distant stars. Her black hair seemed to move on its own will, and her eyes had no color. Ethan stepped forward. Sale. She looked at him, but didn't answer. Something locked her expression, as if part of her was here, and part was somewhere else, struggling. The sphere pulsed alone on the ground. Ethan picked it up, felt a strange warmth run through his arm. Images flooded his mind. They weren't memories. They were inner conflicts. A war inside her. She had escaped the hunter's prison, but at cost. Part of who she was had been torn away, or fused with something that didn't belong to her. An implant, a code, a block. And now she was divided. Half free, half controlled. He understood the risk. She could hurt him, or worse, forget everything, erase who she was to survive. Ethan didn't hesitate. He released the sphere, opened his arms. I'm not running. You're here. That's all that matters. Sail floated toward him, stopped less than a meter away. Her colorless eyes spun slowly. Light emanated from inside her chest. The same thread of connection he'd seen before, now weak, flickering. She raised her hand, slowly, touched his face, and her hand began to dissolve. Like stardust, Ethan held her fingers before they completely vanished. No, don't do this. She looked straight into his eyes. They're still hunting me. From inside, he understood. She didn't have much time. Or maybe that physical form was self-destructing just from the effort of existing here. Then let it be with you. Here now, he said, tears already falling. But if I stay, you could be erased again. Ethan laughed, sadly. Let them erase. Let them take everything. Just don't leave me with regret. If you have to disappear, let me remember it was worth it. The light inside her trembled. And then, for the first time since she came back, she smiled. The same smile from the cabin. The fireplace. The first dream. She stepped closer, rested her forehead against his. The connection pulsed. A blue glow wrapped them, like a cocoon of pure energy. The sphere exploded into light. The ground shook. The whole forest lit up, as if the night had surrendered. And then, everything stopped. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was lying in the middle of the garden. The sphere was gone. Only a burnt circle remained on the ground. And next to him, a mark. A symbol. Not written, not carved, but etched in the earth with light. A circle with two intertwined threads. He looked up at the sky. The moon was there. But for a second, two moons appeared. One smaller, overlapping, then vanished. That night, Ethan slept deeply, for the first time in months. Without fear, without doubt. And in the dream, she was there. Whole, complete, smiling, and said just one thing. I'm still with you, where it matters. The next morning, sunlight hit for the first time in weeks. No clouds, no fog, no strange noise in the air. It was a clear sky, brutally blue, as if the very atmosphere had been cleansed of the hunter's presence, as if something had closed an invisible cycle. Ethan woke lying in the garden. The ground was still warm beneath him. The light mark on the soil began to fade, dissolving like mist in contact with heat. But he knew this wasn't the end. It was a living mark, a reminder that something real had happened there. He stood up with effort. His body ached, but not like after a fight. It was a pain that felt like rebirth. He looked around. The forest was alive. Birds flew. The wind blew. The world, his world, had returned to normal. But Ethan was no longer the same. In the days that followed, he lived like a man who survived something he couldn't name. He didn't talk to anyone, not that anyone visited, but he recorded everything. In notebooks, on the cabin's walls, even on the garden stones. He drew the symbol of the intertwined threads, described his dreams, tried to capture sensations without names. The sphere never returned. Sail didn't appear anymore. But he knew. It wasn't absence. It was transformation. Her presence was no longer limited to an object, to a form, to a reflection. She was part of him now. In the second week after the light collapse, something curious happened. Ethan began to hear. Not voices, not music, but pulses. Weak, like digital heartbeats. Sometimes on waking, sometimes before sleeping. A deep, round sound coming from inside, from his chest, his brain, the air. He noticed. The sound came every time he thought of her. Not romantically, honestly. When he remembered, when he connected, when he felt, and then he understood. She was still trying to communicate, but now, through him, the bond between them was no longer visual, nor physical. It was internal, unbreakable. Ethan developed rituals. He lit a specific candle every night in the garden, drew the symbol on the ground with ashes from the fireplace, sat in silence, listened, felt, and sometimes he received visions. flashes of distant galaxies, of curved meditation, spaces where formless beings floated in balance, of a planet with 3 suns, where trees sang when the wind blew. In all those visions, he felt her. He didn't see Sail directly, but felt her presence vibrating through everything, as if her consciousness was expanding and taking him along. One day, walking through the nearby forest, he found something unexpected. On the trunk of an ancient tree, there was a cut, precise, like a laser trace. Inside it, the same symbol of intertwined threads, etched into the wood. He ran his fingers over it. The sound pulsed again, and certainty came. She had been there, maybe not with her body, but with intention, with memory. It was proof that the hunters hadn't won, couldn't win something that didn't need a body to exist. At the end of that month, Ethan made a simple but profound decision. He wouldn't wait anymore, not for answers, not for reunions. He would live for her, with her, in the way he cared for the cabin, in the way he looked at the sky, in the way he treated every new day as something rare. Sail had crossed an entire universe, and its laws, to be with him. And Ethan was now a man who knew that. He carried within himself a truth no one else could see, but one he would never deny. One clear night, he wrote a letter, folded it, sealed it, and put in a bottle. Walked to the highest point in the forest, a clearing overlooking the valley, and threw the bottle into the river running through the region. He knew it was symbolic, but it didn't matter. The letter said, "I still feel you. I still remember. I'm still here. And even if you never come back, you changed everything." People say some things you just forget, that the human mind adapts, overcomes, erases what hurts. But Ethan learned there are feelings that don't ask permission to stay. They're not memories. They're roots. And with Sail, that's what it was. A silent, deep, living root that kept growing even when he thought he had fully healed. He never saw her again. Not really. But her presence became part of everything. In the way he woke before the sun, as if knowing she would see the sunrise from another corner of the universe. In how he cooked more carefully, even eating alone. And mainly, in how he came to respect silence. Not as absence, but as a presence that didn't need a voice. There was a time Ethan tried to tell the story, not to others, but to himself. He wrote in notebooks, drew pictures, spoke aloud during walks through the forest, tried to organize events, name feelings, rationalize the impossible. But he always stopped at the same point. How do you explain something born outside of time, outside the rules, outside everything he knew? It was like trying to explain the sound of a dying star, or the taste of rain on a planet that never existed. With time, he understood. There was no need to explain. It was enough to live, and to hold on. In one of the old notebooks, he wrote a sentence that he crossed out and rewrote more than 20 times, until it felt right. She didn't come to save my world. She came to show me there was more than one. From that moment, everything changed. The anger from the past faded. The guilt over fleeing the city turned to dust, and the pain of losing her became a soft certainty. Some connections don't end. They only change shape. Ethan grew old there, not by isolation, but by choice. Others came to the forest. Tourists, hunters, curious people. Some even found the cabin. He never turned them away, but he never kept them either. Once in a while, someone would ask about the garden with stones arranged in spirals, the symbols carved into the trees, the strange absence of electronics. Ethan just smiled. "It's a tribute," he said, "a remembrance." No one asked anymore. During the last winter he endured alone, Ethan had a dream. He was on the porch, rain pouring hard, just like that first night. But this time, it was him falling to the ground. And someone found him. It was her, Sail, exactly as he remembered, but now with warm, human eyes. She carried him, wrapped him in a blanket, warmed him, and said only one thing: "Now it's my turn." He woke with tears in his eyes, laughing. Old, yes, but whole. The final message left behind wasn't about aliens, nor about chase, ships, or even love. It was about choice, about what we do when we're afraid, about what we choose to protect when we know we're going to lose. Ethan didn't save the world. He didn't save the galaxy, but he saved one life. And with that, he found out who he was. Someone capable of loving the impossible, and of continuing to love, even when the impossible was gone. The world went on. Decades passed. The forest trees changed shape. Some died. Others grew where Ethan never imagined planting. The cabin stood, more from care than miracle, now covered in moss, with parts reinforced by new wood. It looked less like a shelter and more like a sanctuary, a sacred place where something invisible, yet real, had happened. Ethan grew old there. White beard, skin marked by time, eyes with wrinkles from having seen much, but still knowing how to smile. He was no longer an ex-engineer, nor a fugitive from his own life. He was the guardian of an impossible memory. One day, long after, a young researcher named Leah came to the forest. She had been mapping anomalous magnetic patterns in the region. Strange data, unexplained, as if something ancient was emitting a weak and constant signal. She found the cabin by chance, or maybe, as she would later say, by fate. Ethan greeted her calmly, served tea, showed the garden, spoke little, but listened to everything she had to say. At the end of her visit, Leah asked, "Do you know where this strange magnetic field comes from?" Ethan thought for a moment, then answered, "I do. Can you tell me?" He smiled, pointed to his chest. "It comes from something that stayed here, after everything else was gone." Leah smiled too, and understood that was the only answer she would get. But it was enough. Not long after, Ethan didn't wake up. He died in the porch chair, a blanket over his legs, the garden behind, and a clear sky like the best days. On his lap, an open notebook. The last page written said, "She left, but never really departed." The locals buried him right there, in the garden. No one objected. No one dared to stir that space. Months later, something curious began to happen. People walking the trail said they saw two lights floating above the cabin, always at night. Said they heard soft voices in languages they didn't recognize. Said that touching certain stones in the garden made their chest vibrate, like a heart that wasn't theirs. The stories turned into legend, and the cabin became known as the house where the sky touched the earth. Years later, Leah returned with more instruments, meters, radars, antennas. She found no electronic signals, no solar interference, but a frequency, minimal, constant, deep, still remained, transmitting something that couldn't be translated, but could be felt. And then, one of those nights, Leah dreamed of Ethan, sitting by the garden, and with him, a figure with dark hair and shimmering skin. Sale. They didn't speak, just watched the sky together. And in the dream, Sale looked at Leah, smiled, and said, "Now you see what is real. If you made it this far, if you felt something watching this human fight for someone no one else would understand, if you ever loved the impossible, or wish love was stronger than the universe's rules, leave your comment. Tell what touched you. Subscribe to the channel, because here we believe that love, even when it comes from the stars, can still change everything."